In this episode of TWiP, it's all about transformation. This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. In today's show, we're going to be talking about transformation from many different standpoints. Transformation from the standpoint of, you getting sick of the genre that you're shooting. Maybe you've been shooting models and you're sick of it, or you've been shooting macro and you're sick of it, or you've been shooting real estate, you know who you are, and you're getting tired of it. In this show, we're going to talk about all that transformation, as well as the transformation that you may photograph in terms of some of the projects like G's working on. Giulio Sciorio, my guest host today, he is photographing some gentrification transformation that some neighborhoods in Austin are going through. So we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Then at the end of the show, stay tuned all the way to the end, because there's an interview with the amazing and talented Sue Bryce, who will also be talking about, wait for it, transformation. So she's going to be talking about her personal transformation as a person, as a photographer, as well as how she has sort of dedicated herself in her businesses to transforming us photographers to being better photographers, and to being, living our best selves in terms of profitability and income and all that sort of stuff. It's a fascinating interview. I recorded the thing and I watched it twice already after I recorded it. So it's pretty cool. So with that, let's start the show in just a second here. Before we do that, I want to thank our sponsors for this episode, and that's our friends over at Capture One, made by Phase One. So Capture One, as you guys know, big fans of This Week in Photo, and they're also makers of an amazing post-processing application that is helping professional photographers across the world do amazing things and sort of step away from the status quo and into something a little bit different in terms of how you post-process your images. Capture One is amazing. In fact, next week or the weekend after next, I'm doing a webinar on This Week in Photo with the Capture One folks, where they'll be deep diving into the specifics of migrating from Lightroom into Capture One and some of the pitfalls you may hit and some of the, the successes you may have as you do that. So I want to thank those folks for sponsoring this episode of TWiP. You can grab your copy of Capture One, a demo, even at twip.pro/Capture One. That's twip.pro/Capture One. All right, Giulio Sciorio, welcome to This Week in Photo, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. I looked at how long it's been since the last time I spoke to you on Skype. It said 6 months.
Yeah.
What's up with that? 6 months. I mean, and I can't talk because I kind of went lights out for a while there too. So what's going on? So give us, we don't want to know, you don't have to share the details, but where'd you go and what's happening now that you're back on the scene?
I've been shooting a lot, and basically transforming my work into a direction that I feel is more beneficial for, I hate to be that guy, but I feel it's more beneficial for the planet and for my community around me, and then also good for me. Photography for me is much a spiritual practice as it is an art. So it's important to feel that fulfillment when I'm creating. And so for years I wasn't. So I made the Finding the Photographer's Vision class, and I took my own class, and I went and did what I said to do.
You ate your own dog food. You made the dog food, and you ate the dog food. Yeah.
I did. It was damn good too.
That's cool. It's so weird, and you and I spoke on the phone earlier about this, and a lot of people that are This Week in Photo fans know that I personally took a hiatus from This Week in Photo for a while. And, I did a show where I said I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it back, and that was sort of the phoenix, or, the transformational moment of, what do you want to do with this thing? Is it important to you? Is it important to the world? Should you keep doing it? Should you not keep doing it? Should you do something else completely? And I think a lot of us as content creators, artists, photographers, etc., go through that period where, right? Whether it's triggered by personal experiences or just things that are happening in your life or to you, or around you, or it's just, I need a change, So, yeah, and I'm interested to hear it because you spoke a little bit earlier today and just now a second ago about this sort of this it feeding the spiritual side of you, right? And do you tell me a little bit more about that? Is this more of like sort of like therapy for you where you can just tune out from all the stressors that are in your life and then focus literally through the lens and go that way, or is it something else?
No, yeah, in a way it is therapy. In addition to the wonderful therapist that I see weekly, it is therapy because when you are shooting, and when you're shooting and it's of your vision, you are fully present. You're not even really paying attention to the camera so much. You're more so, especially with how I work. It's like I need to adjust the depth of field slightly, aperture, shutter for timing and gain with the ISO, and it's like all that. It becomes to me, it's not a tool, the camera. It's an instrument, and I'm the musician, so to speak. So it is a spiritual practice, and I've had many spiritual experiences this year while photographing. It's going to sound a lot of woo-woo for people, but when you work to make your best photography, as hard as I do, and a lot of us are in that boat, you hit walls, you overcome the walls, those barriers, right? Mm-hmm. And you transform. And when you're in the middle of that transformation, when you're having that breakthrough, it's a spiritual experience. You're closer to God or whatever is it. It's beyond this realm. And you're having this intimate connection with, in my case, the people that I'm photographing. And it's just an amazing feeling. And when you're creating in this way, and it's of your true self, when there's no pretense, you were just there as a curious observer, you're making images that also have a positive impact, at least in my case, on the community that you're present to and that you're photographing.
Yeah, it comes through. It's interesting you say that because it reminds me of like when chefs say that if you're in a bad mood when you're cooking, it sort of comes through in the flavor of the food or in the food. I wonder if that translates to photography when you're shooting that, even though we know it's all photons, f-stop, shutter speeds, ISO, all that physics behind it, how much of you is going into that shot when you put that shot together, and will that be translated later out of that shot? So it's interesting. So when you talk about transformation, and there's a couple different directions I want to take. So the first one, let's, and I hate to do this because you and I talk about gear all the time, but if you look at this from the standpoint of transformation gear-wise, and let me set the stage for you. So a lot of photographers are, when we buy into a particular gear system, whether it's Fujifilm, Lumix, Sony, Nikon, Canon, etc. One of those brands, we tend to become zealots for that brand, right? We tend to become, I call it digital or photographic Stockholm syndrome, where you're sort of, I invested all this money, therefore it has to be good, or else I was a fool for buying this thing. But in your personal experience, Giulio, and because I know you've switched, and you've done a couple of different things. You went from like on the small camera, big picture to the Micro Four Thirds, and then you had a stint where you were shooting not exclusively, but primarily with mobile phone and doing mobile phone type photography. And now you're Fuji. Tell me about that path and what led you through those different milestones.
Well, what led me through was my bank account because it was damn expensive. And
I don't sell stuff to buy stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have rented lensrentals.com or any of those cool places that rent.
Yeah.
But because I was sponsored by Panasonic for, I was like 5 years, and it was a really cool relationship, and they were wonderful people to work with. And
you brought me into that fold, I think. You're responsible for my relationship with Panasonic.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you got to get involved with these guys. They're doing some really good stuff, and it still is to this day good stuff. I don't use it. I have a GM1, but that's for my son. He's 3 or 2.5, so he uses it because it fits his hands. It's pretty rad to see him work with it. But I left Panasonic, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I can shoot whatever I want to shoot. Not that I couldn't before, but there was always like this thing. I'm creating this. How can I help, the organizations that are helping me? And when that was gone, and that was a barrier, it was a consideration. When that was gone, it was like, what do I want to create? And what is my vision? Who am I as an artist? Which goes deeper to who you are as a person. And then what's the right gear? Because truthfully, it's all good. It's been all good for many years. It doesn't mean it's a good fit for you. And you have to find the gear that's a good fit. So as you're developing your vision, and a vision's a combination of your creative style, your intention, your worldview, all these things that are important to you as an individual, and you're trying like some gear, like I was using. I bought a DSLR, about 2 Canon 5D4s. I'm using them. I'm like, these are really nice, but they're not the right fit for me. And I wasn't sure exactly where the work was going, but I'm like, let me let the gear follow the work and not the work follow the gear. And then I went from Canon to Sony. I had an AR7 II and then a 3. Is that the new one? Whatever the latest one is, the 47 megapixel one or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is cool. Wasn't for me. And then I ended up with Fuji, which I had tried before. And I really started to understand it more, thanks to a lot of it, honestly, thanks to Capture One Pro, because I almost gave it up.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, because I want to hear about that transformation away from Lightroom into Capture One. That's another one of your transformations, right?
Oh man, it's so good. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But while I'm doing this, I'm minimizing my kit. I'm going smaller kit. Now I've boiled it down to 2 X Pro 2s. 3 primes. I have 2 Instax printers. I don't carry both printers with me at all times, but I usually have a printer to use when I'm shooting. And it's a wonderful experience. I don't use any camera straps. I usually put a 16 mil on one for wide and 35 on the other. That's the most telephoto I have, which isn't really telephoto at all. And when I'm shooting with one, the other one rests kind of on my arm, and then I switch back and forth. And I shoot one profile, and it's a very simple process. And I have 2 bodies, not as a backup, but because I have them set exactly the same. So, and that's why I got 3 lenses I have, which is the 35-1.4, the 16-1.4, and the 23-1.4, because the exposure is always the same. Everything's going to be always the same. I'm not thinking about the camera. It totally, for me, it's like totally gets out of my way, and I'm creating, and it's just freaking awesome.
And I hear that, I hear that a lot from people that shoot Fuji, that it is that sort of experience where the camera gets out of your way and you're able to concentrate on that. And I want to dive into that a little bit more in the context of workflow. So again, you and I were speaking earlier, and you were telling me, and I purposely didn't follow up on this statement that you made, but you said that in the span of 1 week, you were able to shoot and deliver 20 jobs to 20 different clients. And one of the jobs you were delivering while driving or something, right? So take us through that workflow, because that's a transformational workflow for a lot of people that shoot raw, take it back, ingest, go into Capture One, edit, spit out the good ones, make a gallery for the client, email the client, all that stuff. So how did you distill that down into, I just shot the job 5 minutes ago and now the client is, has the images? What's that flow?
Sure. Well, it's a workflow that's been evolving for a while. And just to be clear, it was one client, but they gave me 20 assignments in a week.
Okay.
But I mean, it's still 20 locations,
That's
20
still,
shoots.
Yeah.
You have to deliver I told them I could do it within 2 hours, but usually it was within 30 minutes, depending on the connection of my iPad Pro. So basically, I thought long and hard about how I was going to, what's the easiest way to get this to the client? How can I be of service to them? How can I make their job easier? Because I know the images are going to look good. I know how I'm going to shoot them, because that's all done and buttoned up, and it's a nice process. But how can I get the work to them? So obviously, getting the white balance right in camera, having my color set up how I like it, that's the easy part. Then I was like, well, I want to synchronize and have GPS. That was not good. So I stopped that right away. I'm like, we're not going to worry about GPS this time. have an iPad Pro first gen with the SD dongle, and I would shoot. And some of these shoots, I only had about 10 minutes. Like I had to be in, shoot and split. The ones where I had an hour, I'm like hanging out. I'm like, dude, this was done like 30 minutes ago, but I'm just going to hang. This is kind of cool. Yeah. I was working with a lot of international artists and whatnot. Bring them into the Photos app because you have to with iOS. Pick a handful, bring those into Lightroom. In Lightroom, Lightroom CC, I already had my gallery set up to share, and I had them to share only flagged images. So once I uploaded 8 for one shoot. And I looked through those real quick and I said, okay, these are good, or this one needs a tweak, or this one's way off. Sometimes the light changes, and I would hit the auto exposure or the auto adjust, and it would basically get me to a point where it was good enough, not perfect, but good enough. Flag it, and then boom, it automatically go to the cloud, and the client on the other end was getting it. They're putting it on their socials, and they were just like, when they were introduced after like the first day, they were introducing me as like their awesome photographer, and they were thanking me for my extreme professionalism. And they're like, can you do more? And I'm like, I can't, because I have to be done by 5 o'clock because my son, except for like a couple nights, I was able to go out later. But that's amazing that they were like, we wish you could do all the shoots.
Yeah. And how are you when you shoot those, when you're doing those, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, one of the takeaways I remember from talking to you, I think it was at some trade show we were in. I think it might have been Austin, but we were talking about your workflow, and that you were not a proponent of RAW. You're a proponent of JPEG and fine tuning the settings in your camera so that they are spot on, so you don't have to do any post processing, thereby allowing you to do the things like you're doing, ingest through the camera connection kit into your iPad and send off, right? Because you're not bringing those photos in RAW and then tweaking, or am I wrong?
Oh, you're wrong.
What?
So
you're bringing those RAW files onto the iPad and editing. That's okay. Tell me what's going on here.
Use Lightroom CC, I would just use Google Photos and deliver that, because every client that I work with has some sort of G Suite account, and what an easy way just for them to automatically get it into a folder through Google Photos. But I was a big fan of JPEG when the workflow on a mobile device for RAW wasn't really developed. But now it's closer, where it makes sense. Like if you do want to make adjustments, you can. So I thought about maybe shooting JPEG and RAW, and that would have been a way to do it, and then just give them the JPEGs immediately. That would have been a more efficient way to do it. But I decided at the last minute, let me just shoot RAW specifically for this and leave it at RAW, and have the second card as a backup. Just because a lot of things have been breaking lately, and I'm like, dude, my cameras are pretty reliable, but if a card goes down, I'm toast.
Those gremlins are always following you, man.
You just never know. And when do things break? When you work, when you're using them, and when do you need them most? When you're using them. So I just wanted to make I'm like, I'll spend the extra couple minutes and download the RAWs.
See, that's another transformation, because you were hot and heavy on that anti-RAW. You can get it right in JPEG. Treat the JPEG as a transparency back in the day, or a slide film where you got to nail the exposure. Treat it like that. And now you're back to RAW again. Interesting.
Yeah, but we were on 3G connections, and like I said, RAW processing on a mobile device was like good luck.
Yeah. Back then, for sure, right?
It's a different world now. I think if I were to do it different, you do this 20 times in a week, and the nice thing about it, like I was basically done every night at 5, and the client had their images delivered, and I was like picking up my son from daycare, and I'm like, cool, we can just hang out with my wife and be family for a couple hours, and it was great, and everyone's happy.
Yeah.
If I were to do it.
Oh no, go ahead, G.
If I were to do it differently though, and I thought about this early on, I'm like, should I bring my MacBook Pro and just use C1 Pro and then AirDrop? I think I would have done something like that. Just because I like what I get out of Capture One Pro so much more than I do out of Camera Raw, and I think I will do that in the future for sure.
Well, in the chat room, and by the way, Christopher Barry is our community manager. He's holding the fort down in the chat room. Thanks, Chris. And so if you guys have questions, just make sure you @mention This Week in Photo, and Chris will grab them for us. And Chris, I think you can just text them to me, because I didn't build a Google Doc this time. But the interesting thing that I wanted to circle was there's I don't know if this is in other genres or other hobbies or professions or whatever, but there's always this constant in photography. There's always this constant change, and there's always tribalism, and you know, Capture One is better than Lightroom. No, Lightroom's better than Capture One. Nikon's better than Canon. Canon's better than Nikon. Micro Four Thirds versus full frame. On and on and on and on. Meanwhile, the all the stories aren't getting told, and the art in it isn't getting made because all the artists are in the corner, bragging about how many camel hairs their paintbrush has, right? So how do we get out of that, G, from your standpoint? And I throw that to you, not to put you on the spot, but you've been a proponent of that, just less is more sort of ethos for a while. How do photographers break out of those sort of, the White Walkers versus the Starks kind of, world and actually get some work done?
Well, I mean, I got off of social media. I don't have an Instagram account. I think I have a Facebook page, but I can't even get to it because if I log in, I'm back in. I'm back in. So for me, I had to just get rid of everything. You can see like my white walls, it's like clean in here. And I had to turn off just so much of my life and focus on photography and focus on building relationships person to person. I'm not saying I won't go back on the social media. I certainly will at some point, but with a different perspective. And I needed that clean break. It's not like a weird relationship where your significant other is totally manipulating you and you don't realize it. Then one day you wake up, you're like, whoa, who am I?
Yeah.
But you need if you're shooting when you're shooting for a living and you get an assignment, all that stuff goes out the window, like which camera is best and what compute. You don't care. You're like, what do I got to do to make the image look good and deliver it to the client and bill and get paid so that I'm still able to work and I'm able to be of service to those that I'm working with. If it doesn't fit into that, you just don't consider it. So for me, like I said, I wanted to use Capture One Pro, but there's still some workflow things on my end that I want to tweak. So I'm like, well, what do I know? I know Lightroom, CC. So I delivered hundreds of jobs on CC specifically, and I'm just going to use that.
Yeah.
But if you're
use the tool the tools or the tool stack that works best for you, right? And that serves the workflow and your budget, right? I
will say this, if you're not doing this for a living, you don't have that pressure. Like if I don't shoot, I don't make money. If I don't make money, things don't get paid. So it's like, I don't hang out and be like, I'm just going to zen out and wait for inspiration to come to me. And I do meditate daily, by the way, but I make it happen. You have to be like an athlete to make it happen. So if you are not doing this for a living, you got to give yourself personal assignments and these are not, I'm not talking about easy assignments. Like I'm going to go photograph the clouds for a couple hours. Make it hard. If you get to do anything well is not easy. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear this because they're like, well, if I just buy the preset from that YouTuber and I buy this application and this filter, I'm good to go. But nah, it ain't going to make you a better photographer, make you maybe a better technician.
Or a better customer. That's a better customer. Right?
Yeah. And it's like when you're pushing yourself, then if you have the right gear, then the kind of work you want to do. Because it's like, oh man, that fashion really scares me. Great. Go shoot some fashion. Go do what scares you the most. And you have a lot of people like, I'm a natural life photographer. Cool. Go scare the crap out of yourself and shoot some flash. Force yourself to be uncomfortable to the point where you're stressing, where like your beard is going to turn all gray. I did that. I've been doing that all year. I mean, I've ended up in these little churches, like I'm like the only white dude in the church and everyone's super chill. And I'm like standing in front of the choir because I work at conversational distances, so about 5 to 8 feet. And I'm in front of the entire church with my camera and I'm photographing a choir while they're singing. And and I'm like, if I pause to think about that, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm invading these people's personal space. But it's like, do you want to make an awesome photo or not? Right? Yeah. Do you want to make an awesome photo or not? Then you're going to use tools that you need to use. I hate tools. The instrument for your art, and you're going to push yourself, and you're going to be uncomfortable. You may have a bit of a meltdown, but when you come out of it on the other end, that is how you transform. you don't just kind of like hang out and like go on a forum and be like, this is the best camera. None of that matters, because the camera companies just want to sell you cameras. The software companies just want to sell you software. They do very good, clever marketing, and I'm a sucker for that stuff. I geek out. I watch videos about Fuji and Leica and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be that European dude standing on a rock and by the water photographing the seagulls. I fantasize about that. I watched a 40-minute video going to sleep the other night. Some dude polishing a Leica camera in a factory. Swear to God, I was like,
wow.
That's a real video by Leica, and I'm just like, yeah, this was great. But you have to push yourself, and the gear needs to not be a barrier. If it's a barrier a couple times, that's fine, because you can write it off to learning curve. But if you had that gear for 6 months and you're still like, what do I do in this menu? What's the deal with the suitcase menu? Then you need to put that thing on eBay.
Yeah.
And take a loss and get rid of it and get something new, because life is not going to pause while you try to figure that out.
Right. Yeah. And what you were talking about before is the whole 10,000 hour rule, right? You could buy a preset, or this reminds me of, and I'm going to date myself here, even beyond you, G, with the beard, because I'm still older than you. But the back in the day, there was this, remember Kai Kraus and Kai's Power Tools and Meta Creations and all that? Back in that era, this is when I was learning Photoshop. Kai Kraus used to publish these chops. He called them chops, CHOPS, online, and the internet was new, so it was like text only. But they were essentially recipes to do certain things. They were channel operations, chops. And, first do this, then make another channel and run Gaussian blur on it, then load the first channel into that channel and cut out the blurry part, and then do this. And then, and at the end, you had some text that looked like Chrome. Right. And that's how I learned Photoshop, by following those different recipes and then sort of internalizing how those things work. And then you fast forward today, and that's like pre-layers, by the way. There was our layers, the layer equivalent back then was save as and change the name so that you can load in that document again and go back, and now we have all these other features. So, back then it was the 10,000 hours was like just building up that muscle tissue and muscle memory of understanding how that stuff works. But now you can just buy presets and click a button and it'll make the chrome effect now. And I feel like, much like what you were saying, is that better? Is it better to just be able to click that? Is that in service of the art? Because now the artist can get his or her vision out quicker without having to worry about that recipe to get the Chrome text, when they could just get Chrome text? Or are they doing themselves a disservice by not learning the steps necessary, at the programmatic level to get, to that level? What do you think about that? Is it better to have it pre-baked, or learn the ingredients and know how to bake it yourself?
Well, it depends on your goal. If you want to be because photography is a left brain and a right brain dance. If you want to be a good technician, then learn the technology. But if you want to be a good artist, you have to learn and develop your vision, and then use the tools that get you to that vision, and what tools you use, and whether that is a preset, or if you use your camera in aperture priority or automatic or full manual like I do, doesn't matter as much, as long as you are able to visually communicate that vision and do it in a way that you're like, yeah, that's what I wanted, or that's better than I wanted, or yeah, that wasn't quite there. But I learned Photoshop the old way. Like, I don't use any plugins. I don't even use Photoshop anymore. I don't even use it. But
you learned Photoshop by going to Barnes and Noble and buying the Photoshop Bible. Remember that?
I hated that thing, because
it was like this thick. I finally threw mine out because they were like, it was hard because
they
there's
would
history.
Bust 1,000 pages, and I'm like, all I do is read through every 1,000, all these pages, like 1,000 and X amount of pages. I will be really good at Photoshop, and I get maybe like 20 pages. I'm like, I can't do it.
I can't do it. Yeah, no, I was there too. I had the Photoshop Bible, the Illustrator Bible. I had a lot of different Bibles. Well, speaking of work, I want to before we dive into the listener questions in the Pick of the Week segment, I want to take a look at some of the projects that you've been working on, and And I want to have you take us through it. So I'm at your website now, giuliosciorio.com. So folks definitely go to it. I wanted to talk about one of these portraits of gentrification, in terms of transformation, because that's sort of that's a literal transformation of a neighborhood, right? From what it was to what it is now. Which of these is the best one to click on? East Austin or Chicago?
Yeah, do the East Austin one.
Okay, so let's bring this up.
The Chicago one, by the way, I did while I was leading a photo walk, which was fun. So I want to start doing more photo walks where it's like me and like 20 people and we go do this stuff together. Because then it's like, we're telling the story of a neighborhood together. So just kind of throwing it out there.
Well, tell us about this one. Tell us about this East Austin gentrification project.
Sure. So I met this really cool guy named Billy. He's a barber. And this is how I'm going to tell you how I ended up in his church. And I wanted to photograph him and his friends. I was like, oh, let's do this thing about like everyday gentlemen and show how you can still take pride in your appearance and not have to be rich and spend a ton of money. He was like, yeah, it sounds good. I'm like, it was on a Saturday when I was talking to him on the phone, I'm like, let's meet up tomorrow. He's like, well, I'm going to be at church singing. And I'm like, well, can I come? He's like, sure. I'm like, can I bring my camera? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, cool. So I got the address and I'm like, when I got off the phone, I was like, dude, I just invited myself to his church with a camera. And I was like, wow. I'm like, okay. And, and I kind of just went with it. So I ended up in his church. I talked to his pastor, a really cool pastor. And he actually gave the sermon was on vision, on having tunnel vision. And I was just like, dude, you're blowing my mind. So for like 40 minutes, I put the camera down. I was just like, I was having I had a spiritual moment in there. And I was just like, and I'm not a religious person, but I was just like, I got it. Like I got what Pastor Gary was saying. So I talked to Pastor Gary. I said, look, I'm kind of on the spiritual journey myself and I'm documenting it with my camera. Is it cool if I take pictures? Of course. It's like, since we haven't told the congregation, just don't photograph the kids. And when we have our prayer in the beginning, please respect that. And okay, cool. So I'm just in there I only brought one camera and one lens. I brought my 35 1.4 and my X Pro 2. And when the choir was singing, I just got up in there and I was like photographing them. And, I photographed her. So I was maybe 5 feet from her in front of the entire church and they were singing and I was just snapping away. And then I photographed his wife, which is down below. She has the Obama purse because I'm like, you got an awesome purse. I'm like, I have to make your portrait. She's like, of course. Got the Hope fan to pair with the Obama purse. And then some of their portraits were just when I was walking around and just kind of snapping. And when I'm on the street in East Austin and I'm photographing people, I usually give them an Instax print, like this gentleman here. I forgot his name, but it's in the metadata. I'm like, hey, can I make you a print? And I make them. I print right from the X Pro 2 wirelessly to the Instax printer, and when it comes out, people are like, it's like they've seen like Jesus or something. They're like, whoa, like what is that? And it's seriously. And I'm like, dude, it's a photo. It's it's you. And I'm like, wow. Is that like ink? And I'm like, no, it's like a real photo under like, holy cow. And it's an amazing way to connect. And I'm like, here's a photo. Here's my business card. If you want a copy of the image, I'm happy to give it to you. Just hit me up. And it's a great way to connect with a human being. And I'm like, this is a wonderful way to experience photography is through this human connection. But I guess to back up, the story of East Austin is in 1928, the city of Austin told the African-American community that if you want any kind of services, gas, electric, police service, fire department, water, you have to live in East Austin because we're going to shut it off. If you're African-American, you're not living in East Austin, which is a really crappy thing to do. And so the entire community of African Americans that were living in Texas or in the Austin area had to move there. And then the Hispanic community came and they made this vibrant community, really cool, like barbershops and barbecue places. Like it's like if you want like good, diverse culture in Austin, you want to go to East Austin. And now with just everyone moving here, like myself, I don't live in East Austin, but it's a cool place. And The people who live there, they're being priced out. Churches are closing because property tax in some of these little homes that people bought for like, $7,000 a year back in the day. The property tax in some of these places is more than a mortgage. It's insane. So they're being forced out. And what goes in is some bougie coffee shop, or, they had a pharmacy, which now they call the pharmacy with an F because it's farm to table.
Yeah.
And it used to be an actual pharmacy, and I've eaten there and it's tasty. So it's gentrification is one of those things, like if it's grandma that is on her deathbed or doesn't want to live there anymore, and she can sell that house for $1 million and it's been long paid off, then great. Maybe the rest of the family lives in Atlanta or Houston and she wants some cool. Other people are like, I lived here my entire life. I don't want to sell. And I kind of have to now. And then they're like, where do I go? Because the rest of my family lives here too. So it's just, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just a curious observer with a camera, and
which is what you should be, right? You're a photographer. You're not.
Yeah.
You're not saying that, hey, I'm going to photograph this and then run for office on these photos. You're saying, hey, I'm going to document what's happening in this community, which I think is important, right? I mean, we talk about this on This Week in Photo a lot. Just the idea of moving away from the pretty pictures. Pretty pictures are awesome. So I'm not saying don't do pretty pictures, but moving more towards storytelling. I mean, the fabric of our entire society is built on story.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even Netflix and chilling, you're watching stories, right? So it's all about story. So photographers, in many ways seem to have moved away from that a lot. And not to say that everyone should be a photojournalist or a street photographer, but tell stories, even if they're fictional. Tell stories with your work and communicate the things that inspire you to other people, and use your camera as a megaphone to do so. Especially with social media, it's a huge, gigantic megaphone to get your message out. Whereas back in the day, back in just 10 years or so ago, is take a photo and no one's going to see it except the people around you for the most part, right?
Yeah, and the idea is, though, go out with an intent. You don't have to make that happen, but there's something about the way the right brain works. When you go out and you say, look, I want to meet people on the street. I just want to talk to them. And you're walking and you see somebody, like when I saw Jake in the on his trike, I'm like, whoa, this guy looks amazing. This old dude on this trike, and he's hiding out in this car wash. So I went up to him and said, hey, what's going on? Why are you here? And the light was amazing. So I'm like, if I have to get his photo and run, I'm going to do that. But, and he's like, I think it's going to rain. So, and my name's Jake and this is my trike. And so we just started talking. It's like, you can be a present to this human being. Like, my phone is in my pocket. And that's why I don't like shooting with a phone, because it's just, even everyone's so used to this, and it just feels so impersonal when you're just kind of like, let me take a photo. Oh, I'm getting a text, or it just feels so impersonal.
Yeah. Audio listeners, he's holding up an iPhone, by the way.
Oh yeah, sorry. When you have a camera, a dedicated camera, they see it, and they may ask you a little bit about it, and but you talk to them and you say, hey, you know what? I'm documenting East Austin as it is transforming, as it's gentrifying. Can I make your portrait? I think you look amazing here. I'll tell grown men, dude, I think you look beautiful with this light on you. You look great. Can I make your portrait and give you a print? And I would say more than 99% of the time, people say yes. I've had 2 people since I moved to Austin, which has been about 7 years, 2 people say no. And I'm like, okay, cool. No worries. I don't want to.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, you're doing that here in the continental U.S., and bridging barriers using the Instax prints. And a friend of mine who's also a TWiP Pro member, Peter Levshin, does the exact same thing, but in parts unknown. Like he traveled to Papua New Guinea, for example, and will give the tribes people there a print of themselves, which, presumably many of them haven't seen before, and get the same kind of reaction that you say you get. You're like, wow, it's a print, right? So the print could be the universal passport into various cultures, right?
Yeah, it's a magical thing. And then I do this every quarter. I make a photo book.
Oh, nice.
I make these big blurb photo books. And I use them to promote my photography, of course, to ad agencies and client direct. And I'm like, oh, you got to see this stuff. It's really fresh. It's honest. These are not models. And I have artist statements in there. It basically mirrors the website. I put a little more in the books to add something special. But when I can, I try to meet up with the people that I photographed and show them the book. Say, hey, look, this is the end result. What do you think? And when I went back to the church recently, and I took Val and Roman and had some other family come in, and I showed it to the pastor, and he loved it. He's like, "Oh, that's really great. Thank you so much." And he was just really grateful, and I was grateful for him. I'm still grateful for meeting him and meeting Billy and all that, and it added some positivity to my life. So it's like if I can help in some way, even just through being a positive force, and I'm able to make beautiful photography at the same time, man, that's a win. And these are personal projects. One of them on my website about mental health was a commission, which was great. But that's how you get those commissions, in case you guys want to know. If you're street photography, you're go into documentary work like I'm doing, I kind of dance around all that back and forth. People will come to you and say, hey, that personal project looks cool. Can you work with us on this project? And it's of your vision, because you're only shooting your vision. You're showing only that. If you go on my website, I don't show my old stuff. I only show my new stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how people hire you. If you guys want to get hired, and you don't have to be a full-time pro to get hired, because your work is valuable. Without photography, boring world we would have. Your photos are valuable. Don't give them away. Don't put them on Unsplash.
Yeah. We have to do a whole show on Unsplash, because I know you're passionate about that. I also want to, since we have a little bit of time, we have extra time before I roll the, because we're not getting a whole lot of questions in. I think people in the chat room are shy or something. I don't know what's going on. But that was my poke at the chat room.
Ask the hard questions, folks. Seriously.
Yeah. But before I roll the Sue Bryce interview, I wanted to take a peek at that. I was going through your website, and I found another body of work that I wanted to question you and put you on the hot seat about, and that's this one here. So this is fantastic, man. So tell me what the impetus of this body of long exposures is about, while I sort of step through them.
So every year in Austin, we have the ROT Rally, which stands for Republic of Texas Rally. It's a bunch of bikers, not the polished bikers you see off on Instagram, like the gentleman riders, but like real, like, like this lady here. She'd probably kick your ass, but then I also make you some brownies too. Like real, like hardcore bikers. And I thought it'd be fun while they were going right down Congress, right past the Capitol. I was like, wouldn't it be fun just to stand there and do some cool, just kind of slow panning, exposures. And so I did, and I went and shot. And because there were so many bikers coming by, I did this whole series in maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Wow.
I stood there.
Wow.
And I was done. The post on this is like, I think I maybe bumped a saturation of it. That was it.
Wow. That's cool. So eye-catching. I love that.
I shot this with one of the smaller little Fuji lenses, a 23 f2, which really good for focusing. Not that you really need it on this, but yeah, it was fun. I was like this one here was rad. Like she saw me shooting, and I just like, I got lucky with the LED flash.
Oh, this one right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's killer.
Yeah, and it was cool. I got the popo in there too. I'm like, why not?
That's cool. So, folks, when they were watching this, make sure you head over to Giulio's his site and check out this crazy body of work he's put together. It's ridiculous. All right, G. Before we jump into the listener questions, I want to give you a chance to share your pick of the week. You're just, in case you've forgotten, your pick can be anything related to photography. It could be a tip, a technique, a suggestion, a lens, a camera, software, anything. So, Giulio Sciorio, what is your pick of the week?
Oh man,
put him on the hot seat. I literally on the hot seat right now. Look at it.
I had two.
Yeah, we'll give us both of them. Why not?
Okay. The picks of the week.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is the Fujifilm 16mm 1.4 XSXFWR, I think is the entire name.
Oh, Jesus.
I think it's a 16mm. It's got a 1.4 aperture. It's a beautiful lens. I've had that lens for a while, and only in the last couple months I'm starting to appreciate it, and it's awesome. Like, it's sharp. It's just a nice lens. All the Fuji lenses have so much more character than any modern Japanese lens I've used, and something, I don't know, I think they build it into it. It's just like, oh man, it's just
love it.
It's like, if you have like a really fine bourbon or barbecue, whatever it is, and you have that one special thing, you're like, oh, I can't wait to eat that or smell that, or whatever. It's like that when I put that lens on. I'm like, wow.
See, your geek is showing, man. Your geek is showing.
It is, but it's got such character. Like, it's even wide open. It's just it blooms. The 3 Fuji lenses I have, if you shoot wide open, the highlights bloom just a little bit, and I love that. It just has a little bit of a vintage feel, but you get the modern niceties of like autofocus, and it's got the focus clutch where you pop it back. You're in, you can high shoot, and then I put on take the viewfinder and turn off the EVF, so I can just kind of look through the ground glass on the X Pro and see the frame lines, and it's rad. And one thing I like to do, if you have an X Pro 2, and I think the X Pro 1 does it as well, is I'll use a 16 when I go to a location, because that's my widest lens. I'll put it on there, and I have one of the function buttons on the front of the camera. You have like that little switch for the EVF. Mm-hmm. I have that set, so when I touch that, it shows me in the live viewfinder the different focal lengths, how they would crop in, and that basically tells me, okay, so for my second body, I should have a 35 or the 23 lens. If I had other lenses, it would tell me which one. So then I put that other lens on the other body, and I'm all set. So it's a really cool feature. Second thing I like is Capture One Pro. That's my second, pick of the week. And I got to say, I don't know if I would have kept the X system if it wasn't for Capture One Pro.
Really?
I don't think I mean,
you're using the Fuji specific version of Capture One, right?
No, I bought the whole thing because I want to use it for my older images. I'm going back sometimes. I process older images, and I just bought it outright.
Cool.
I did have the Fuji version. And I'm like, I want to pull up some old images I shot with my EM whatever back in the day, or whatever. Any of my many cameras I've had. So it's if you are using Lightroom or any kind of camera raw with a Fuji sensor, you're not getting the most out of that camera. With Capture One Pro, I'm getting nicer images from the smaller sensors than I ever have from a full frame. More character, more color. Just the sharpness is phenomenal. The noise, I love the way the noise looks. It's so like rich and not uniform like film. It has a randomness to it. To me, it's like the missing ingredient. And I think Fuji should do the next step and include it in the box with every camera they sell, and offer people free training online. Not that Capture One doesn't have a ton, because if you go on a YouTube channel, it's rich with training. But I've been using Capture One since version 3. I don't know. I think that was maybe more, maybe a little bit later.
And they're on 12 now, right?
Yeah, so I've been using it since 2006 when I was in a studio, and the photographer that owned the studio had a Hasselblad with a leaf. I want to say it was a leaf back, and was Ethernet, I want to say, into a Mac Pro, and that's what we use. But man, it gets your colors so clean. And if you shoot, if you've ever put, and this is from any camera, if you've ever put a raw file into Lightroom and it pops up and you're like, oh, that looks so awesome, and then all of a sudden the colors bloop change, and it becomes like this junky kind of magenta, weird Adobe color. You're like, what the hell just happened? That don't happen in Capture One. Your awesome color doesn't get messed with. The Capture One people are like, you know what? We're not going to mess with it. If you like it, great. If you want to mess with it, cool. So I set I use ProNeg standard, like the flatter one. I like that's my where I like to shoot with, and it doesn't mess with it. It doesn't mess with it. It leaves it alone. So if I like it, I'm done. I can't say enough good things about Capture One.
Yeah, I'm getting a feeling that you don't like that piece of software that much. So I don't know.
And plus you can buy it if you don't want to do the monthly rental. You can buy it. it's the industry standard on the high end of photography. If you're doing like production, advertising work, it's the industry standard. You're not going to go on a high-end ad shoot and people are going to be busting out Lightroom. They're going to be like, what is this?
Love it. Love it.
So,
all right. Oh, good. Those are two
yeah.
perfect picks. See, you got away with two. Love it.
It's worth it, folks. Just
go get it and play with it. If you don't like it, then hey, you didn't like
and
it.
it pairs one with Affinity too. If you want to use Affinity Photo, it pairs really well with that.
Yeah, I did an interview with the managing director over there, which will be airing in a week or so, and he had some interesting things to say about the pairing of Capture One and Affinity Photo. All positive, but as an alternative to the cloud, which is they're sort of that safe harbor right now for people that are anti-subscription for whatever reason.
Yeah, then you can use Final Cut 10 for video and just kind of have all your bases covered.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into the questions here. We're going to take a couple here. Maybe not all of them, folks, but we will take a couple because we had a rolling interview. The first one is from Rob's Photography, and Rob says, let's bring this up. Rob says, what type of printer are you traveling with? Giulio Sciorio, what type of printer?
So I have the Instax SP2. It's the little business card one.
Mm-hmm.
You can get them on Amazon sometimes for like $100. Then I have the bigger one that does a square.
Yeah.
I use those actually to mail out or to give out when I am showing a portfolio. So you do something called leave behinds, that when you take your portfolio back, you allow them to keep something.
Yeah.
And I print my branding images. Those are my most important images, my branding images. I print a selection of those every quarter and I pair those up with the book. And people love those, even though it's not of them. It's one of the images. Like I'm doing the Obama Hope fan with a close up of the purse. People love those. Yeah. So yeah, and I don't know what the square one is. There's only one square one.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you, Rob's Photography. Next question up is from Ruth Happel, and Ruth says, question for Giulio. I really like this style of impressionist photography. These are your bikers. I played with that over the years. Can you give technical details?
Not off the top of my head, because I shot it over a year ago. I had a Fuji system like what I have now, and then I didn't quite understand it. I sold it. Then I bought Sony and Canon, and back to Fuji.
Yeah.
So I don't quite know. I think it may have been a 15th of a second. The nice thing with digital is you pan and see what it looks like.
Play around. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were all going the same speed. It was like a big parade of bikers. So I really don't know. It was probably ISO 200.
So ISO 2, but
yeah, you can do that at any street corner. Just stand there, practice with cars. I do it all the time, bicycles and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's a question. I don't know if you can answer this one. I know I can't. It's from Fractal Builder, and Fractal Builder says, "What program within $100 is best for landscape focus stacking?" I can't answer that. So
sorry, I don't know.
You don't know? Yeah. Come on. I don't know.
Well, wait. With $100, I think you can focus stack pretty well. I want to say with Affinity Photo, and it's like what, $50?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
That would be a good question for the TWiP community.
Yeah. TWiP community, TWiP Pro folks. If you know the answer to that, let us know in TWiP Pro. Here's one from Trevor. Trevor says, since your guest very much sees photographers as living historians, any thoughts on the increasing dangers faced by photojournalists worldwide? What's the future of photojournalism? Yeah,
that's some scary stuff. Some people, not here in Austin, because people here are pretty friendly, but some places you got to just be careful. And I think before you take your camera out, just be present and look around and see what the environment is. Don't put yourself in a space where you can get harmed. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
I think we're in a hostile environment. You're just around the world right now from the White House on out.
Yeah.
Sadly, but it'll change. Just hold tight. Find a spot where you can push yourself creatively and not put yourself in harm's way. And that often comes from just talking to people.
Yeah, now is not the time to be standing in front of tanks in Tiananmen Square or anything like that.
No, don't do it. I know that there's this romance with that stuff, but I don't know. I like to photograph stuff that may be a deep context, but is a friendly environment.
Yeah. All right. Cool. What a great episode, man. It's really good to have you on and pick your brain. We have to sit down and do a proper interview with you where we sort of deep dive into stuff, because I really want to chat with you about your thoughts on Unsplash and that whole world.
Got 'em.
I know you're high. Every time I mention Unsplash, another one of your beard hairs turns white. I know.
I got them, man. I cannot wait for those guys to get the hell suit out of them.
Yeah. Hey, here's another question before we get out of here. Steven says, how do you get personal ideas? How do you get ideas for a personal project?
Steven. He took the vision course. He took my class, Finding the Photographer's Vision. I think he knows. I think it may be a trick question. It's all through the vision file, Steven. So go back to the course and open your vision file up. That's where it starts. And, and sometimes you don't have a clear idea. You just go out and do it. Like, I didn't realize I was going to be documenting gentrification until it was kind of done. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is actually a series on gentrification. Work now, right? Yeah, but it's more so like, I'm curious about this. Let me go out there. And I invited myself to the church. But I went to the church without the intention of this is going to be part of a gentrification project. Later on, when I was done, I was like, it kind of came to be.
Yeah.
Find what scares you and photograph that, unless it's going to put you in harm's way.
Unless it's going to put you in harm's way.
Yeah.
Find what scares you and photograph that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Like don't go, anything. It's easy to determine what's going to put you in harm's way. Don't go photograph things that you should not be photographing. And I remember the story. What was it? It's got like 3 years ago. We did it on TWiP. And there were these two women, tourists, went down to Los Angeles, photographers, and they thought that they were going to go document homelessness down there, and decided to take photos of a homeless guy sitting on the street without his permission, and then he attacked them and killed one of them, I think.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to photograph homeless people, I know that we see it's attractive to a lot of us. It was to me early on in my journey with photography. If you're going to do that, talk to them and talk to these people. They're suffering, man. And then give them some money. Give them like $20. Give them $50. Make it a little painful for you, because you're getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And these people got to go to bed on that hard concrete floor, or sleep outside with them one night. If you really want to be, you really want to see how glamorous it is. I'm not a fan of photographing homeless unless they are getting paid. And when I do photo walks, I'm like, do not photograph any homeless people unless you are opening your wallet and you're talking to them, because people don't hear them. All they see is them holding a sign. But a lot of these people are just veterans that got ground up in a meat grinder and spit out.
Yep.
Give them some money. Talk to them. They're human beings. Don't just go photograph them. It's not, just ain't cool.
Love it. There you
go.
But
that's a sore spot for me.
No, that's good. That's going to be in our interview when we talk. You're going to hit a lot of sore spots, so get ready. Get your calamine lotion ready.
Dude,
So, we showed a couple of your sites, or actually you showed your site. Let me bring it back up here. This is your main site, giuliosciorio.com, but then you've also got this guy here. Tell us about this community that you built.
So, small camera, big picture community is something that as I started to notice that I was feeling really bad on social media, like just so many people that are judgmental and angry on social media, and you can't take it personal, because those are people that are creatively stuck, and who knows what kind of issues they have behind the scenes. But I was like, I still don't. I empathize and I feel bad that people are in certain situations, but I don't want to be around that if they're just coming at me all the time.
Yeah.
Petapixel commenters, but so I remember you and I were talking about communities, trying to build a community where people can have a safe place to go and have conversations about photography and be open about it. And you're like, hey, check out Mighty Networks, and I was like, oh, that's great, yeah. So I kind of copied you in that regard.
Good.
But it's great. It's just you want to explore the deeper side of photography. We really don't talk much about gear. It's not that I don't necessarily want to. Or I mean, if you want to do it, go ahead. But we're more about getting into the depths of who you are as an individual. We talk about like wellness practices for artists, more like the spiritual side of photography without getting too deep into that, because there's still the technical side that should be discussed. It's still important, but not at the end of the day, as cameras get smarter, it's, I don't think it'll be that important, but
yeah,
it's still a value.
Love it. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's always a pleasure having you on. You're welcome on TWiP anytime you have a free minute. So
cool. Well, next time I won't be 6 months, I promise.
Yeah, no, I won't let it be 6 months for sure. So those are the two sites. Give us the sites again where people can go to connect with you, see your work, and otherwise stay in touch with Giulio Sciorio.
Yeah, just plug my name into the browser, giuliosciorio.com. I think it'll be tricky to spell.
The spelling of your name is an IQ test, right? If they can spell your name and get to you.
Super Italian. And then community.scbp.co. And that's linked from my portfolio as well. But the community is free to join. Come in and hang out. If you want to go deep, then we have Finding the Photographer's Vision course, which you can purchase. And that'll challenge you. It's a very difficult class, but it's one that will, I promise you will become a better photographer by taking the class.
Love it. All right, Giulio Sciorio. And folks, if you want to, we're wrapping up the recorded version of the show right now, so we're going to continue the live version. So if this podcast cuts off for you right now, that means you're not watching us live. But if you want to connect with us, subscribe to This Week in Photo at thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe. You can find us on the blog that I just mentioned, or on Facebook, on YouTube, on twitch.tv, and on Periscope. We're streaming live to Twitter via Periscope right now as well. So connect with us on any one of those networks, and we'd love to have you around. And with that, it is time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.